As we're getting everybody in and getting them muted and settled in, we're ready to roll. Now, if for those of you who don't know, Grow Global, we have a great resource for you. Go to whygrowglobal.com. Lots of information there for agents to grow and expand their business, to network, watch videos from the past on what we've done here at our Monday Masterminds. A great way to connect with agents from all across the country and around the world. So we're excited to have been able to put this together for the agents, because this is for you. This is for you to grow and expand your business. And it doesn't matter what company you're with. If you're here, we want you to learn, expand, and grow. And today's topic is one that's really hot right now. I know when the NAR Settlement came out a few months ago, it was wild and crazy. We quickly jumped in and navigated, helped the agents to clear a path on what they were going to do. Many companies didn't do it quick enough. We did. Our company and our group did. And we had a lot of agents that were really pleased with how we're helping them navigate it. And with the NAR Settlement coming up really soon, there's a lot of things that you need to do to get prepared for that and put things in place. Corporate has done a fantastic job. Many of the companies have done a fantastic job of putting things together. Our company did too, of helping you navigate. But also it's up to the individual agents, their teams, their mentors, their advisors to help agents to navigate this. So today, we've got 3 top-level agents that are going to share with you their plan for the NAR lawsuit, how they're navigating it, what they're expecting to happen, and what they're doing. We've got Stephanie Gilezan, Alex Montagano, and Dan Hubbard that's going to be talking to you today about their program. So first, let's kick this off to Dan Hubbard out of Indianapolis. So Dan, tell us a little bit about your feelings on this.
Yeah, so just Rob, thank you for having me on this call, Stephanie, Alex as well, and John. Just to kind of give you a little bit of a background of myself. So I actually was a doctor of physical therapy for 6.5 years, and I transitioned into real estate. I joined Alex's team back in September. I just got burnt out from healthcare and wanted to be paid what I was worth, right? So so that's kind of a little bit about where I'm coming from, and just kind of when I talk, you'll hear I'm a very bit systems, processes, skill sets. Those are the things that I really hone in on. And I think that's what's allowed me to have success, not before this, all the NAR settlement stuff, but then also now that we're in it, just kind of transitioning into, being comfortable already with the changes that we've had. So
yeah, I could do that. And then
Here we go.
There we go. So, just a little bit about me to date. I've done, so from January, 2024, I've done about 26 transactions for about 8 million in volume. So for my first year, I'm happy about that. And, nice. It's something that won with Alex, but also I'm also coached by the Coach Bill Pipes' organization as well. And so Alex and I had a conversation at one point of, hey man, like what you want to do, what you want to build, I can give that to you. But I think what you want to do is you need something else as well. And so Bill Pipes' organization with Alex has really helped me hone my skills in a very skill-based market, as we all are aware of. So that's just a little bit about me. And honestly, your question of how do I feel about it? It doesn't bother me at all. I mean, it's business is business, and we have to adapt, right, to some changes. But at the same time, if we have the systems in place, the habits in place, the processes in place, it's easy.
I like that. So tell me more about what systems you're going to put in place.
Yeah. So, I mean, just from a natural, I think for me, as we've all heard, listing presentation equals buyer presentation, right? But a lot of us, or at least I haven't really heard a whole lot of what does that exactly mean, right? We all know the listing presentation. We all know going in the home, touring the house, having that conversation of that list, but we haven't really had a discussion about what does it mean for that on the buy side, right? And so right. When I'm meeting a new client, either through Zillow, at the house, or Sphere, referral, whatever that may be, my primary objective is to make an appointment. It's no longer, hey, I'm going to meet you at the house on Zillow, and then I'm going to set up a search in the MLS, and then we're going to just kind of wing this thing, get out there, and we'll find you a house, right? My primary objective now is to make that original appointment at a coffee shop, at our office, whatever that looks like, and actually present a buyer presentation, because what I'm trying to do is gain exclusivity, right? Now that with, the NAR settlement, we have to have a buyer's agency agreement signed. And so how do we do that? And how do we have someone agree to a 6-month to a year time frame of paying our, whatever that fee that you decide to that compensation that you decide to charge for your services? Or how do we give our UVP, right, our unique value proposition in that appointment, so that they'd sign with us, and then we can actually help them going forward. So for me, my system of my buyer presentation, I have and you let me know if you want me to go down this, down here, or if you want to go in a different direction, but I have kind of 4 or 5 steps, right? So every conversation I have with either a Zillow lead, a Sphere, or a referral, whatever that looks like, open house, is, you want to qualify, obviously, every time you talk to somebody. But I go through that first appointment, I'm going through a buyer questionnaire. I'm going through the home buying process. I'm then going through market data. So I pay attention to Altos Research, Mortgage News Daily. I call myself the doctor of real estate, because I want to know everything about my market, nationally and locally, right?
Right.
Because we're providing value by sharing, how's inventory levels? Oh, it's 38% higher this year to date than we are last year. Just talking about that and providing that value is how you build that respect with your clients. From there, I go into then I go into gaining exclusivity, which is giving my unique value proposition. And at the end of that, I say, all right, let's sign this contract and let's start going. So that's kind of my system from start to finish in my appointment process.
Very nice. So Alex, jump in here and let's talk a little bit more about how you're planning to do this.
Yeah, so our stuff went into effect July 1st. Indiana Association of Realtors kicked things off July 1st. So for us as a group, we had been preparing all the way back into March. And it was one of those things where it's they made the announcement in March, ton of information. EXP pushes out a ton of information. We have a bunch of internal dialogues with other agents and networks to be prepared. And then it was just this hurry up and then this waiting period of uncertainty. And there was an extension nationally, but the Indiana Association of Realtors pushed things out effective July 1st anyway. So for us, our plan is, look, this is all about, if you look at the long game of our business, it's about cultivation of relationship, right? That's the most important thing that you're doing with any between client and agent, right? It's the relationship. And so I think what initially had happened is there was this uncertainty of how things will go. And, coincidentally enough, I signed a 5,000 square foot lease the day that this settlement went into effect. And my initial thought was holy smokes, what did I do? But the reality is, Dan had mentioned a couple things, and a big one is setting appointments. And the appointments used to be get somebody in a home, start the process, solidify the relationship, and move it forward then. And look, I've done a lot of handshake agreements on, are you going to work with me in a driveway or in a basement or in a living room of the first house I've ever met somebody. And look, Zillow and online leads have been a huge pillar of how I built my business as fast as I have. And it's a support pillar for our team. But what we do is we're taking those initial calls, we're educating on what is happening and what the changes are. And look, if somebody wants to run and go look at a house right away and it's an online lead and they don't really care about all this stuff, we're leveraging the one-time showing agreement that EXP's put together. And that's kind of look, there's no agency associated with that. It's not perfect, but it starts the process to give you the opportunity to be in front of somebody. And look, it's our job to open doors, put people in real estate, and help people buy that. And we've got to stay out of our own way from the standpoint of saying things like, well, I can't let you in if you don't sign this. Well, EXP did a great job putting out a one-time showing agreement, and our team's done an amazing job of leveraging that and then turning it into agency. And so for us, we had an agent last week answer a Zillow call. Less than a week later, they're showing them the one home. then it was, I want to write an offer. Then they signed an agency agreement, and then they got a purchase agreement signed, just like that. And look, like 4 months ago, I'm not sure anybody was really sure how that would go or felt super comfortable about it. But, all that came into effect after internal dialogues in our office, team meetings, trainings, conversations on here, some of the other stuff, the EXP thing that they put together in the very beginning with Leo and on, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, you have to practice the conversations and the education that you're providing to your clients. You can't try your sample scripts on the phone with a $500,000 lead and hope that it sticks. And
Right.
so for us, forming those relationships and then just getting the agency agreement signed. And look, we've talked about this from the very beginning. You should be having your sellers provide a buyer agency co-op anyway, because it's in their best interest to do so. And in our market, we've very rarely seen that a seller's not going to pay anything. And so we had an agent this weekend do, it was a $281,000 property. They were offering 2.25%. Well, we had a buyer agency agreement of 3%, and the buyer paid the gap of that. And what I'm noticing in a couple short weeks of this is that, man, I feel like our buyer side commissions are actually increased. And we had a ton of fear. Are we going to get paid at all? Or who's going to be the one working for free? And look, I keep a tracker of every transaction we've done. And since July 1st, we've done like 28 transactions as a team. And I'm putting more 3% on the buy side than I have all year.
Yep.
I don't have hard data on that yet. I will soon. But I certainly feel like as a team, we're giving ourselves a raise by going out and saying, look, you're only going to pay $800 and the seller's going to pay $8,000. And look, it's been a successful conversation. Our team's done a great job of it. Dan being one of the folks that are leading the charge. So again, for us, leveraging a one-time showing agreement in the instance we need to, cultivating the relationships quickly, education, meeting somewhere off-site to help build a unique value proposition to make sure they have full understanding of how important the agency agreement is, and just getting it signed. And we haven't seen a ton of pushback for as many as we've had signed. We've had a couple people, but look, that's a small number with the sample size that we have as a group. So that's what we've done a lot of.
You said something really unique, because back when this first came out, I was looking at everything, putting some analytics on it, and I was telling some agents, I said, I think this is going to increase commissions for agents. And everyone looked at me and said, you got to be kidding me. Are you kidding me? This is going to lower commissions. I said, no, I think it's going to actually it's going to have an opposite effect than what they think is going to happen. And what you're saying is exactly coming true. I saw that happening and people thought I was nuts.
Well, if you think about some of the regulations that happen in other, my financial advisor is a good friend of mine. He recently joined our team as our financial director. And he had talked about regulations in the financial industry years ago.
Yep.
And look, one, you're worth what you pay for. But when the clarity comes and people need to understand why they work with you, and you need to understand why people should work with you, it really forces the agent to level up. And look, like, you want to do this part-time, or you don't want to have any system, like, there just isn't going to be a place for you anymore, because there's been so much change since COVID. And with all of that, like, as you change, it's forced you to be better at the craft of what you do. And look, I got in the business in 2012, and between then and now, I've often rooted for more challenge into our market, because so many people were coming in and stealing business for 10 cents on the dollar, 30 cents on the dollar. It's like, get them out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the stuff that's happening now that's going to do that. It's going to force the agents that are charging the fees that they are to be better at what they do. And the consumer is going to feel insanely more valuable with that. And so it's not going to be, oh, Alex, you're getting in the way of a deal. It's, wow, I couldn't have done this deal without Alex. And we've all done enough business, every single person on this call, to know how important we are. But now our clients on the other end of the deal is going to feel exactly that.
So true. So Stephanie, I want you to jump in here and give your ideas on where this is going and what you've got set up for it. And by the way, if you have any questions for this panel, go ahead and put them in the chat box while they're talking, and we'll get them answered. So go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, and we'll open it up soon to have that dialogue and get going on it. But Rob, it was, I think back in March when this announcement, went down, when the judgment happened, right? And we got on a Monday Mastermind, the same group of us,
Yes.
and we talked about the positives that are going to come out of this. And where I got extremely excited, because like Rob and Alex and Dan, change is a good thing for our industry. It keeps us on our feet. It keeps the great ones of us that are in this industry to continue to get better, right? Because the day you get lazy and you have every reason to not work as hard or not have to justify your value, what then becomes your value, right? And so I got extremely excited about it because we have all been faced with those instances where you've got a listing, you open up the door, you're showing it, and then after you've done that heavy lift, somebody comes out of the blue and says, oh, but I've been working with them. And you're like, what? Wait a minute, right? We have all kinds of these stories. But what I love the most about how everything is so transparent is because one, and you can go back to that March call that we did together here on the Monday Mastermind at Grow Global and rewatch that, because there was a lot of great nuggets there. Because one, I know my value. Like, one of the things I have always hated, this is my 25th, almost 26th year in this industry, and one of the things I always despised was having to work with buyers who just assumed that my time was a donation to them. I didn't like it at all. It really rubbed me the wrong way. It really made me jaded and slighted to just stay on that listing side and not worry about the buy side so much. Because, you could work with somebody for 9 months, putting them in your car, driving hundreds and hundreds of miles, and then they don't buy something, right? And you've done every bit of that for absolutely nothing. I would much rather say, here's what I'm worth. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's my job description. And this is how much I cost. I just love it. I absolutely love it. And like Alex and Dan, who have noticed that now that commission, that cooperating commission side, is increasing for them. That is exactly what the opportunity here is. Because let's go back to the other side of this industry, which is commercial real estate. And forever, commercial real estate brokers working on the buy side or the tenant rep side always had to get their commission agreements set forth in writing ahead of time. Why? Because if you didn't, you worked for free. You might be lucky occasionally, but majority of the time, you worked for free. And so I love that model is now being applied across the board, because I've never been free. Never. I'm worth too much, right? And when you believe something to the fullest, it is so easy for you to lay that out. And look, there are going to be agents, and please, none of you be one of these agents. Don't, because you don't have to be one of these agents. But they don't feel, they don't see or know how to estimate or present the value they bring to any transaction. And so they might be going, well, I'm just going to show houses for $500. Well, here's the thing. If they go out and they show houses for $500, here's the most important thing that you all have to remember. What you put on that agreement is the charge you're going to make regardless, okay? And this just happened last week to somebody I know, where they put 1% on a buyer rep agreement. They show a house that is actually offering 3% co-op. Well, guess what that buyer agent has to accept? 1%. She cut her own legs off. I go, why would you do that? She goes, because I wanted to help them. Guys, helping them is facilitating a service and being compensated for it. It is okay. Nobody said that we got into this business to be a charity, right? Nobody said that we have to do services for free. But you know what? Prior to now, we were doing a lot of stuff for free. We don't want to admit that. And we always want to come, pounding our chest saying, oh no, I'm earning, $500,000 in gross commission income this year representing buyers. Well, that's what I'm saying though, is how did you do that? And you think back to the successful reasons, what got you to that closing table. And that's your value proposition that you need to set forth. And, this happens to me all the time where my husband's on the call. It happens to him all the time, especially in the commercial arena. We'll get reached out to by somebody who wants to buy a business, or they want to buy a retail center or multifamily or whatever the case. And we say, well, this is the commission agreement you're going to charge with us. This is the buyer the representation agreement you're going to agree, because I don't have the hours in the day to go searching high and low, taking up any amount of my time for $0. I do not work on a chance. I do not work on a gamble. I work for a set fee, and this is what it is. Well, I'm not signing that. Okay, we'll go find the next person and move on. Learn to move on.
Well,
because one of those guys just came back to me last week and said, okay, I really need you to bring me that. We'll sign this and then we'll go look. And we did. He signed it and we went and looked, and boom, we're going to get done, and I'm going to get paid because I held my ground. Yes, Alex.
I was going to say the other side of this. How many times have you got to a closing table and a listing side of the commission is 3%, 3.5%, and the buyer side commission is 2.5%? And what do? We text one of our friends in the industry or a team member, and we're pissed. And we're like, man, this is ridiculous. I can't believe that agent took that much more money than me. And the reality is like, if you're representing buyers in the past and you didn't have an agreement signed, your commission was left to the chance of what somebody was willing to pay. And look, there were brokerages in our MLS where people would pay, flat fee $500. They'd pay $1. They'd pay 1%. So imagine a world where you go out and you show somebody $800,000 house, and you get there and the commission's 1%. Look, $8,000 is plenty of money. It's great. But if you had a buyer agency agreement signed for 3%, $24,000 is a hell of a lot better than $8,000 in every single world, never not.
Yeah.
And you take control of that. And I think one of the things that we've learned in all of this, and Stephanie, you had said this, like the amount of time and control that you get back as an agent right now is unbelievable. And look, Dan is in an unbelievable position because he started in September, just started prospecting and building and trying to, get his feet wet and learn. And then all of a sudden there's this massive change. Well, he didn't know enough to know enough. And so the change for him was learn this and go do it. And he's done an amazing job of that. But for us, where it's like, man, my friend reached out to me and they want me to help them, and then they want me to do it for 50 cents on the dollar, and I'm not sure what to do because they're a friend. It's a lot easier now to go, look, you have to sign this. It's the law. Here's what I charge. And we'll try to get that paid by the seller. I don't know. Neither do I. I actually do know. Rip it up and move on. And it's way easier. It's way easier. The amount of time that you're saving allows you to go pursue other opportunities.
I'm glad that you brought that up, Alex, because I asked an agent the other day, I said, how many hours did you spend and miles did you drive in 2023 to sell 9 transactions?
Yep.
And it was mind-boggling because the 9 that closed really wasn't where the hours and the time and the miles were spent. Those were those, walk in and knew it and wrote it. The others were spent shopping and dreaming. And, I think in this instance is that we also have an opportunity that we're going to have more serious buyers, because when they commit, think about all the times when you say to your seller, if I can just get the buyer to make an offer, we'll get them on paper and the emotion will start. We'll pull them in once we get them on paper, Well, you now get to get the buyer on paper ahead of time. And so they've made that emotional commitment to purchase a home or a
So-
property or whatever
So
it
this
is.
is actually funny you say that. I had a client reach out to me this past weekend. I was out of town. Hey, Alex, this house checks all the boxes. We're not looking, but boy, it checks all the boxes. And I sent the client to Daniel, another team member of ours. He helps me with my business. I said, Daniel, I haven't talked to them about agency. We haven't done any of the conversation. This is a one-off deal. Can you just give them a call, explain it, get them to sign the agency agreement? They'll be totally fine with the fees, and then just go show them this house. He's like, yeah, no problem. And the initial conversation was, this is just a one-off, Daniel. We'll sign this agreement. It's no big deal, but we're not looking. And this is just a one-off deal. And if it works, we'll go for it. But if not, no big deal. We're totally cool. And he finishes the showing and he calls me and he's like, we're not going to buy this, but they've asked me to set up a very specific search centered around A, B, C, and D. And if we find it for them, they're ready to move. And by getting them to sign an agency agreement and start the process, it's exactly what you just said. Now they're invested. I guarantee the amount of Zillow scrolling and Realtor.com and how do we find it? And did you see this? And what did it sell for? And oh my gosh, this one came back on the market. All of a sudden they're emotionally in. Those people will move by the end of the year.
That's right. I love
It's
that.
always like that.
Well, I think on top of that too is like we get concerned of like, oh, they're only offering 2.5%. Well, how my buyer can't make that up. You would be surprised, right? I mean, how many times, that we've had this conversations with, I go through, as long as you're showing your value, right? We're talking about everything that we're already talking about on this call. I've had first-time home buyers who I know have very little to their name. We're like, oh yeah, they're only offering 2.5%. You've done so much work for us. We'll give you that other 0.5. Cool. Awesome. Like it's a very easy conversation to have once you've built the rapport, the trust, the respect, through the whole process of getting that side, getting that exclusivity, and then providing your value along the way too. So it's not a scary thing, right? People are going to pay you because they see the value in what you're doing.
Well, I think we've had this humongous fear as well as a group. What if they offer nothing? And what I've noticed is there are brokerages that are signing listing agreements, and what they're saying and they're telling their sellers are, Mr. Seller, I'm as the listing side, I take 3%, and the buy side, we're going to market that you're not offering. And in the instance somebody writes it in a contract, we can resolve it then. And there was a lot of conversation about communication between agents and finding out if fees are offered to the buy side. And what we've done, look, we try to have those conversations, but if you can't, go show the house and write it in the contract. Somebody's paying you. It could be the buyer, it could be the seller. No harm in asking for it. And the other side of this is everybody was like, what's this going to do with multiple offers? We haven't seen one glitch of an impact anywhere. We've sold listings with multiple offers. Nobody's offered to reduce their fees. We've had buyers go win multiple offers, beat out cash offers for less money. And nobody's talking about how my commission was the reason I couldn't get the deal. And one of the things we said a ton of in March and April on this call and all the other calls were, it's going to take an extended period of time to get sample size worth of data to understand how things are moving forward. And if you're doing your work advocating for the buyer agency co-op on your listing sides and the market's doing it, if somebody called and said, Alex, we're not offering a broker co-op, I would still write it in a contract. Counter it out. Everything's negotiable, no matter what they tell you. It's all negotiable. And if they don't have another ticket in town, I guarantee somebody's going to come up with that money to pay you. So you might as well go ask for it. And that's what we've seen a lot of already.
Well, and a good listing agent should inform their seller that can happen and that that's coming. They're going to have to deal with that. I'd
like to transition to a listing piece here because we've talked about this a little bit. Let's say you're prospecting a for sale by owner or somebody lists with a flat fee and it expires, and then you talk to them and their conversation is, Alex, if you brought me a buyer, I'd pay you. Okay, so there's your 3%. So we're in previous world, if we're getting listing contracts signed with a 6% on it, you're 3% away, right? So the difference between where they are and plus the listing price and all that. But the reality is, we've asked the question, would you take a listing if they only offered to pay you. And in the past, we did a lot to hold our end of the bargain as agents to say, well, I need to offer the co-op. I need to offer the co-op at 3%, and there's no money there for me. And the reality is, I don't think, and this is more of a question for the room, but I wouldn't run away from a listing now if they said, Alex, I'm not going to pay our buyer agency, and you do everything. You educate, you're an advocate for the broker co-op. You tell them why. I'm not going to pay it, Alex. To me, you still take that listing and you let the agent on the other side, because it's now the way that this is structured. It is your responsibility, if you're representing buyers, to make sure that somebody pays you. And the backstop of that is your buyer. Mm-hmm. And they should be educated to know that. So look, do all the work up front, but take that listing.
Absolutely. Yep. And Alex, I agree with you on that. And, early on when all this was going on and it was, fresh, it was on every news outlet, it was on headlines in the newspaper, that situation happened to me where, a seller had a big parcel of land and he said, look, I want you to list it because you've got the most experience selling land in this area. He goes, but I'm not paying any cooperating commission. Guys, I didn't want to be that agent that at the time put 0 on the MLS. Like, I've never done that in my entire career. Yeah. And I did not want to be that agent. Well, you know what? Somebody else took it. Another broker listed it. They put 0 out there and it went under contract in 24 hours. So don't turn away business for that reason, because you do have to respect and honor what that seller wants to do. And just like Alex said, look, it doesn't prevent somebody from asking for it in the offer or representing a buyer that's already agreed to pay it, right? You got to look out for yourselves.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's all about the seller's net sheet. That's it. It doesn't matter how you get there.
And look, you can amend that contract. So let's say hypothetically you list it with no buyer agency commission to be offered. Well, you're on the market 60 days, you're experiencing a world of pain as a seller. Look, you can keep reducing the price, but what if you went back to the 38 showings that nobody offered and said, hey, we would be willing to offer you 3% if you wrote it with an acceptable offer? Does that get the 38 people off the fence? Maybe it gets a couple, and maybe that's a new incentive to help. It's similar to that idea of, instead of reducing a price, do an interest rate buy down or offer a concession. This is the exact same thing. It's just creative ways to sell a property. But you can't amend the contract if you don't get it. And like Stephanie said, nobody wants to be that person. But here's the reality. It is the buyer's responsibility, the buyer's agent's responsibility. If you're representing a buyer, they better know that they're going to pay you. And if they don't like it, they signed it or they don't. And if they don't sign it, don't work with them.
That's right. That's right. So if you have any questions, then either raise your hand or put them in the chat box, and we're going to talk about them here. If you've got a unique scenario that you've already run into, let us know. We want to hear about that as well, because I'm sure a lot of other agents want to hear it as well. And I know someone asked in the chat box, where do you get that one-time showing form from that you were talking about?
Dan, can you answer that?
Ours is in SkySlope from EXP. You just go, if you type in buyer, it's like number 3, it says single property showing underneath there.
Gotcha. So if you're in EXP, it's in the SkySlope forms. If you're with another company, I'm sure they have something. If not, get with one of us and we'll figure out how to get you some verbiage. So who's got a question for this group? We check the.
Elizabeth put in the chat, she came into the biz at the end of COVID with so many changes that she doesn't feel that she has the experience to really understand everything that's going on, nor that she can accurately convey her value as a buyer's agent. Can she get some advice, or where could she get some insight, training, instruction on this in particular?
Elizabeth, have you done any transactions?
Is she on?
Is she here?
I am. I'm here. Sorry.
That's okay.
I had to find my unmute button. I have done transactions. I'll be honest, I haven't had anything really all that complicated. When I first started in the bit, I've never represented a buyer without a without a BBA. So, it to me, it was crazy to hear all these folks that went into these transactions without an agreement with their buyer. But my broker, when I first came in the business, was like, she straight told me, you never go into a transaction, you never go into that relationship without a buyer broker agreement. So I've never not had one. So I don't know the experience of not having one. However, it was end of COVID, and I mean, you guys all know what that looks like. And then things kind of started settling down, and I thought, oh, great, now I'm going to have some, like, I guess, quote unquote, normal real estate transactions. And then the NAR settlement came out, and then everything went topsy-turvy, and there was all this information, and I'm like, oh my God, I just don't feel like I had the experience that many folks had prior to COVID, prior to all the changes, to kind of set that foundation for me, if you will, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm going to actually turn this to Dan, because Dan started in September of 23. And so Dan, why don't you jump in here and talk about, like, look, you didn't have any experience, and you started getting buyer agency contracts signed in maybe the end of March, beginning of April, right after the announcement was made. So can you talk to Elizabeth a little bit about, like, how you felt, and then what made you feel confident as an agent, understanding, like, because look, Dan, no offense, but your UVP, like, what would you have going for you? So talk about, like, how you built that, and then what differentiated you from another experienced agent that maybe was vying for the same business.
Yeah, I mean, so I've always been adaptable to change. It's just one of my superpowers, right? That I will learn until I can't learn anymore, and then I'll learn some more, right? So that's just kind of my personality. But really, so one thing that, like, my coach, right? I'm in coaching, and he was like, I want you to write down 40 things that you do for a buyer. And blah, 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 blah. I call expireds, I call for sale by owners, I door knock communities that they're interested in. I have a database of, sellers that, off market opportunity because of our team's organization. So I wrote down these 40 things, and that developed into my UVP. That's what I can offer to a client is, okay, your normal agent, they're going to put it in the MLS, they're going to wait for houses to come to them, to come to you, and then they're going to hope that it's a right fit, right? I like to differentiate. I'm active, I'm not passive, right? I don't just let the search do the search's job. If you have I always say, if you have a community that you like, I will be out there door knocking and saying, hey, I have a qualified buyer right now looking in your neighborhood. Have you ever considered selling, or do you know anybody who's considered selling, right? And so I just developed my value. I have affirmations that I say every day that I am the only choice. Like, there's nobody else out there that's the right person for the job. And so some of that is internal belief in yourself as an agent, of that you are the only choice for that person. And then coming up with that list to portray to them, to know that, okay, man, if I don't work with this person, I'm screwed, right? And so I think just like, for you, go, like, make a list of 40 things that you do for buyers. I drive, I show houses, I look at structural problems, go through that and develop. And that's how you will start to develop your own unique value proposition and be able to share that with your client. And then you are the only choice.
Elizabeth, I want to add to that. This is a kind of a story that talks about how the number of transactions you do, or the number of, or being a neighborhood expert does not make you the only ticket in town. And 2 years ago, okay, 2 years ago, I got a call from a client of mine. We were showing them houses, and their parents wanted to relocate to Indianapolis, and they wanted to live on Morse Reservoir. And Morse is a sought after body of water in Indianapolis. There's not a ton of opportunity up there. And my first phone call was to the expert of the neighborhood. And I said, hey, I got a client who will spend $1 million. Here's what they want. He's like, yeah, I know. I got about 30 of those clients. You could tell them to get in line. And when I get one, I'll run it through my list and then I'll send it to you next. And come to find out, my client had called that guy first, and he basically told them the same thing and made him feel like, you're never going to find me a house. Like, you got 20 other people just like this that you're going to do the same thing to. And so they were like, we want you to hire us because you guys are the hardest workers and you got knowledge of the information and you're going to hunt for opportunity. Well, 2 weeks later, somebody else listed a property in the neighborhood. We were the first people in the door. The listing agent was a friend of mine. And he said, Alex, well, we got you. And it got to the very end and they said, you need to do this, this, and this for your offer. We did it. My client's got a house. And it wasn't the master of the neighborhood at the time, the expert, who listed it or represented the buyer there. And it was because of how we work. And so what I would ask you, Elizabeth, is like, if you've done transactions, why did those people hire you? What are your superpowers as an agent? Maybe you're an expert listener. Maybe you're empathetic to negotiating. Maybe and you said nothing was challenging, but maybe there's some reason or something that you do really, really well that makes it so your deals are not challenging. And that is why people hire you. And then once you figure out why that is, then you go to them and you say, hey, look, I don't sell 800 houses a year. I sell 18, and of the 18 people left me 5-star Google reviews, and that's why you hire me. This, and this. And it's a true understanding of, look, like, you should puff your chest out a little bit and say, this is why people hire me. Just like Dan and just like Stephanie said, I think the one thing, if you take anything away from this call today, outside of strategy, it's that every single person that's on this panel believes nobody else is for hire. You hire us. And if you're hiring somebody else, you are making a mistake. And if you can help convey that to a client, here's why you need me in the trenches today, people will hire you and they will pay you, because it is risky not to use an expert or somebody who has a superpower applicable to what you need.
And just to add to that, for those that, have not worked with a buyer agreement, a buyer representation agreement, the truth is that none of you have ever been hired. You've been lucky, right? That's the truth. Am I right? I mean, at least now you have a commitment. You have a document that says you all are working together. And again, that's huge. But I mean, that's why agents in the past have been upset when, they find out that the person they showed 9 houses to bought through somebody else. Well, they never got hired. They never were hired, right? And that's on that agent for not getting hired.
So Alex, Caleb came up with a question, and I know many of the MLSs are going to take the co-op agreement off sometime in mid-August. Some have already done it, some haven't yet. They're waiting for the deadline. So Caleb is asking, how do you find out, what's the best way to find out what the other agents are offering on a piece of property for buyer agent side?
So for me, that's a call right away. I book a showing, I get on the phone, and actually I think it's beneficial because how many times we just text, and that's just not it's not a relationship through text message. Now we have to now you can still text, hey, are you offering? But get on the phone, ask. Now you've already started a dialogue with this person, right? So when you do get into that house, maybe there is an offer potential. You've already started developing a relationship with the other side. So I'd say get on the phone and call and ask.
I think in addition to second that, we're big advocates of like picking up the phone as a team and making that like real life connection. And look, think of it this way. You got multiple offers. Dan picks up the phone, has a professional conversation with the agent on the other side, is doing fact finding for his client, is getting as much information as he can so he can go back to somebody that's agreed to pay him, make a nice presentation about why this house is a good fit. You have a relationship with the seller and now a better relationship with your client because you're working for them. And then you go in and let's say you're competing in a multiple offer deal. Who do you think that agent's going to feel most comfortable with? It's going to be the great conversation that they had with Dan when Dan rings back and goes, hey, remember me? I'm writing an offer on your property. Is there anything else I need to know to make sure this is easy and is good enough for your client that we can get this wrapped up? And so you're forming that relationship. And look, realtors never know when to shut up. They're going to tell you everything you want to know when you get them on the phone. So do that, be a professional, and then relay the information. And then you have the control of everything when it comes time to being in the driver's seat.
And honestly, that's the way it should have always been. It's shocking to me how many offers I receive where I've never even had a conversation with them. No
Yes.
text, no phone call. Thank goodness it didn't go into my spam. Hey, in the past, some did that I never even knew about. And I'm like, why didn't you pick up the phone and let me know? I mean, come on, you know? So, I mean, this is a good thing. It's a great thing. And just because that agent says, yes, we're going to, you know, yes, Dan, we're going to give you 3% cooperating commission, you still must write it in the offer because that's the only place that it's going to get documented. Okay. Yep. But also too, you have to remember that's got to match what your buyer rep agreement states, because you can't say, buyer, hire me, I'm only going to charge you 2%. You can't collect 3, even if a seller's willing to give you 3. You're right. Limited to what is on that buyer rep agreement. And so that's where you state your value up front. You can negotiate it and amend it later, but that's where you have to state that up front.
Well, and when you have that agent on the phone, you're asking about the commission, it's also a great time to say, hey, what is it going to take to get this house? If you've got a buyer that really wants it, ask those questions too.
Yeah.
Mike asked a question. Are you finding that sellers will do buyers 3% if allowed to increase sales price and house will appraise? And Rob said this earlier. It's all this is about, Mike, is the net that the seller walks with at closing. So you can do increases in purchase price. You could do closing cost concession. You can do all of that stuff. But what we've noticed, I feel like 99 times, I don't think we've walked into anything yet as a team. And like I said, this started July 1st for us. We're on day 15. We've pended 27 or 28 properties in that amount of time. We haven't had any situation where I've got a phone call that says the listing side will not pay. What should I do with the buyer? We haven't experienced that. And again, small sample size, but 28 pendings in that short of time. Look, 0 out of 28s kind of tells you something. So, you know, the other side of it is if they're not, or it doesn't appraise, it's got to come out of a cash to close situation for the seller or for the buyer. And we did experience that a year ago. We had a for sale by owner that wouldn't pay the buyer side commission. We explained it to our client. Our client said, I don't really care. I want the house. I'll pay you guys with additional cash to close. And that's what he did. He brought $9,000 and that's how we were paid our fee.
Nice. Very nice. So yeah, if you have any other questions, please pipe up and let's get this panel asked and or put it in the chat and let's talk about that.
One thing I would tell, you know, if you, let's say you're newer or you don't, or it, you know, you go into effect August 17th, we as a team put together, we have, you know, like you have a listing packet. You go on your listing presentation, you have this nice presentation. It's a leave behind, it's branded, it's representative of who you are, right? We put together buyer ones now too that are equally as nice. It's part of a presentation. It is nice to provide that to them so they can reference it. It should have all the information as to why somebody should hire you. And it's professional. It's part of it. And the other thing, look, I've met people in shorts and a t-shirt because I've done this for 12 years and I thought I'm invincible. I don't care. I will not do that right now. I will show up well-dressed, clean-cut, presented, professional, because that's our job. And if you're, whether you're new or you're old, you should present well. That's part of the task. Somebody's going to give you a commission of $15,000, $20,000, $30,000. Put some clothes on and be a professional. Like that's just an easy thing.
Well, that leads right into the next question. Tatiana asked about what is your opinion for new agents getting in the business with this going on?
You know, I'm going to take that because 26 years ago, I was brand spanking new in this business and I was 21 years old, right? And so many people said, how in the world are you going to be successful selling real estate when you're 21 years old and none of your friends can even afford to buy real estate, right? So, you know, back then, what I had to do was not only justify my value, but justify why I had so much value at the age of 21. And immediately got into luxury real estate and commercial real estate, you all. How I did that was not because I was the smartest, but it was because I outworked everybody.
Yep.
I was available. And so you new agents have this amazing opportunity. Whereas you're available, answer your phone, network, be a part. More importantly, ask for business. People back then, people would say, you know what, you're hungry. I want to work with you. They loved that motivation on my part. And so being new, being old, being whatever, the truth of the matter is the people that work the hardest will always be the most successful. And that's what it boils down to.
I would also encourage you, if you're 21 years old, and look, I was 21. Stephanie just said when she was 21 and she got in the business, time, availability, hustle, hard work. I'd cast the biggest net possible to make as many connections as possible. So I'd be doing every open house. I would be for sale by owners. Somebody just Kim put in the chat to dress like a pro. They shouldn't know that you're 21. Like
Right.
You should dress the part, you should play the part, you should be everywhere, you should be knowledgeable. People only care, like it's the old saying, in an absence of value, price is all that's left. That's what we're talking about here. So if somebody sees you and you're dressed poorly or you don't have information, they will go, they're definitely new. If you give them a reason to feel that way. But if you're knowledgeable and you're an expert and you're holding an open house and you know what the 3 houses on the block sold for and the 4 that sold 2 blocks away, nobody cares if you're 21 because they're going, holy smokes, how did you know all that? It's my job now. Sign this document and I can do that for you. Nobody cares that you're 21 unless you give them a reason to go, they're pretty young. I don't think they know. That's how I would tackle that. The other thing, good for you coming into the industry when you're new. You don't know what the old days are like.
That's right.
You don't have to relearn something.
Yeah, it's funny, back in the '08 crash, we had seasoned agents, been around for years and years, just throw up their hands and said, I'm out. The industry's changing. I don't want to learn anything. I'm out. Brand new agents got in during that time and made a fortune. So the real estate industry is always going to change. That's the one thing we know for sure. It's going to change up, down, sideways, whatever. It's what you do with that change. It's how you present yourself. It's how you educate yourself and your clients on what's going on. That's how you win.
That's right.
Any other questions from anyone?
Hey, I just want to echo what was just said. I worked for Rob back in 2008 and brand new to the industry in 2008. Everybody was leaving the industry. I came in and made about 85 grand that year, my first year in real estate selling. And I would encourage everybody, if you're new or old, it's just time to go back to work, get hungry again.
Right.
Hey, I'm going to put Dan on the spot here. Dan, you made quite a bit of money working in the medical field, right?
Yeah.
I think I heard somebody say recently, you've generated more commissions at this point in 7 months, 6 months and 15 days than you did in your last year in the medical industry.
Yeah, I was, because I track everything like you, Alex. So I was looking at it and I said, man, I've already made more money in 6 months in real estate with a hard market, right? Skills-based market that we're in right now, more than I did as a doctor of physical therapy all year. And so I was like, well, I guess I made the right choice,
As a new agent.
A new agent.
So for everyone on the call, the playing field is equal for everybody. Like Dan, and look, I'll highlight Dan a little bit here. When he joined our team, he came to me and said, hey, I want to do this part-time. And I said, no, I don't think that's a good idea. If you really want to make this work, quit your job. And he called me a week later and was like, my last day is this date. Here's when I'll finish my license and then I'm going to get started. I'm all in. And I couldn't believe that he did that. I didn't expect that. But he went all in, and I was like, look, you need to be in the office. You need to prospect. You need to call expireds and FSBOs. Look, that's hard work. It's hard work. And it's, we had Red X. Can I get a dialer? Make enough calls, I'll get you a dialer. Every day's in here. Hey, I got a listing appointment with an expired listing. It's like, oh my gosh. Hey, I got a FSBO appointment. Hey, I did this open house and I invited 50 neighbors and I got 2 leads from it. And all of a sudden the transactions start going up. And then he's working on his scripts and dialogues with internet leads. So when we get a Zillow lead that goes to Dan, he knows how to handle the conversation. And so when we talk about a lot of this, it's conducting yourself like a professional. It's not working an 8 to 5. It's working whatever it takes to generate the business and the opportunity to do it. And it's a testament to Dan's work and his success that he has put the work in to do it. And nobody goes to Dan and goes, you're new. Can I talk to your team lead? Nobody does that. And Dan gets to share the successes that he has and the stories that I tell and then use that. But nobody's going to Dan and saying, hey, new guy, can I talk to the boss? He is the boss in the conversation and he's the one that's kicking butt. So that's just I wanted to highlight that, Dan. You've done a great job and we're very proud of you. You're doing awesome.
Appreciate that, Alex.
It's awesome. But you know what you want, right? You came into this industry, you were quitting an industry you were extremely successful about, and I think that is perfect to sum up the call today because, those who really want to outdo and take exactly what's put in front of us and do better with it can absolutely do that. That's why we do these masterminds, right? To get inspired, to hear, everything that we can utilize and pour right back into our own business. Rob's been in this industry for 99.3 years and he comes to I'm teasing, not that long, but you got to think about, real estate is always constantly changing. In 25 years, I got into the business in the 1900s, 1999. Okay. There's been a lot of changes since then. I mean, we didn't even have an MLS when I got into the business, if you can believe that, right?
Yeah, books. I remember the books.
Yeah, it was the books. I mean,
MLS
it was
books.
and then it went to floppy disk, and then it became internet based, you guys. And you think about that, that was 25 years ago. So, real estate doesn't go through as many iterations as a lot of other industries, right? So this isn't a negative. When I see agents posting in groups or on social media, this is real estate's out the window, I must just, it's like, oh my God, really? That's all you think of who you are? I mean, now is the opportunity and take it. Just like Paul coming into the business in 2008, I saw the opportunity in 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and made tons of money at that opportunity. I see the opportunity now, and I'm going to go out and do the exact same thing.
Yep, the agents that can make things happen and change with the times make a lot of money during that. So you just have to get that in your head. And then, and talking about that, we talked a little bit just a second ago about, hey, how did Dan get in the business? What did he do to start his business? How did he launch his business? Well, how did he lead generate? Well, one of the topics we've had asked, hey, how do you lead generate as an individual agent? We've had teams come on and talk about how they lead generate as teams, but as an individual agent, how do you generate leads? So next Monday on our Monday Mastermind at 12 noon Eastern time, we're going to have that topic. How to master lead generation as an individual agent. We're going to have Laura Camperta, we're going to have Tracy Wiggins, and Jim and Stacy Lambright are going to talk about how they're building their individual business and exploding it with lead generation for themselves. So we're excited about that. Guys, get on whygrowglobal.com. If you have a topic you want to suggest, you can click on a button there and suggest that topic. Go to our past videos of what's coming up. And we can't wait to see everybody on the call next Monday. Thanks, Stephanie, Alex, and Dan for your time today. You guys are awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.